Hello, I'm Kenshi. I'm a professional chef, and today I'm going to show you how to prepare a French-style omelet with the techniques I learned throughout my career in five-star hospitality. The key to making an omelet is the eggs. In this case, we chose organic eggs. It is not fundamental or necessary to use organic eggs. You can use normal eggs. But the reality is that in this case, we are going to use egg and cheese to make the omelet and the selection of eggs. If it is of good quality, it will generate a very good result. Organic eggs are characterized by the type of hen, mainly the upbringing and the feeding method that the hens have. They eat cereals and are free hens. Hens that walk around the yard, they are not all piled up, they are not given balanced food, nothing like that. And that is very much reflected in the size, in the irregularity. As you see, I have 3 organic eggs, each differing in color and size. Then what we are going to be able to perceive in the yolk is that they are much yellower yolks, of a more intense color, and they are usually much fresher eggs. Why this view? As being organic, the time from egg collection to reaching restaurants, hotels, or homes is significantly shorter. In what are the traditional eggs that one usually consumes, quite a bit of time can pass. Especially in seasons of high heat, the difference in what is the egg white is very clear. The egg white becomes more liquid from prolonged heat exposure. Taste-wise, one of the differences I can find mainly in the yolks is the flavor. An organic egg has a much higher fat content than a conventional egg. Let's start breaking the eggs. It's important that whenever we break the eggs, we use a separate small bowl so that we can break them and check that the egg is fresh. If we continue breaking eggs over the first one and encounter a bad one, we'd have to discard the entire mixture. We're breaking 3 eggs. It's very important that the yolk, when you break the egg, the yolk is whole. This speaks a lot about the quality and freshness of the egg. And in this case, I'm using 3 eggs because of the type of pan I chose to prepare the omelet. It's very important every time you're going to make an omelet to take into account the size for the amount of eggs. It's not good if the pan is too small or too big. I'll show you the chosen pan when we make the omelet. This is optional. And to taste, I use a pinch of salt per egg. In this case, there are 3 eggs, so 3 pinches of salt, a turn of pepper, and we start to beat. The idea is to beat the eggs well so that the yolk and the white are well integrated, and that when making the omelet, you don't see white spots and yellow spots. Keep in mind, to make a smooth omelet, you're also incorporating air while beating the eggs. And if we now directly throw it into the pan, there will be bubbles and it will be an omelet that is fine, but it will not be so even. So take the trouble to beat the eggs well and then let them rest for at least 10 minutes so that all those air bubbles disappear. Currently, it's well beaten with visible bubbles. I'll leave it for about 10 minutes to let bubbles disappear before making the omelet. For the omelet filling, I selected Gouda, a semi-hard cow's cheese. I prefer it for its intense flavor, which is not as mild as fresh cheese or as strong as hard cheese. It melts well during cooking, providing a more distinct taste than traditional machine cheese, feta, quartirolo, or any other cheese. To cut it, for 3 eggs, I'm going to choose about 40 grams of cheese, which is no more than this. It's very important, as I told you before, between the amount of eggs per pan and the amount of filling. While it's good for an omelet to have a good amount of filling, it has to have just the right amount to be able to fold it, so it doesn't overflow, and when you present it, you can see the whole piece of the omelet, and that it has some filling inside. You can grate it, or you can cut it very small. In this case, I choose to cut it very small. Either way, the cheese will be inside and won't be visible, but it should be small enough to melt quickly. Imagine that the cooking of an omelet is very fast, and if I put large pieces of cheese, it will take too long to melt, or it will be hard inside. Why the French-style omelet? Well, it's an omelet technique because suddenly there's the soufflé omelet and the traditional omelet that closes like a book. This style of omelet is characterized by the folds and has a medium to high difficulty in gastronomy. In gastronomy studies, during practical exams, if your grade was borderline, you were asked to make an omelet. The difficulty and required sensitivity in cooking an egg is due to the need to accurately gauge the pan's temperature. The egg must be cooked perfectly before folding. If too done, it won't stick, and if too undercooked, it won't hold together. This omelet seems to me to be more tasty, because it has a particularity that it remains quite juicy or creamy inside. The egg should not come out raw once you cut it, but it should be runny but integrated. It has a degree. Now when you assemble it, you will see, at the time of mixing, you ensure that the egg remains juicy, but that all those juices are kept inside the omelette. This omelette is synonymous with five-star hospitality or classic hotels, not just for its quality and finesse, but because it facilitates cooking 4 or 5 simultaneously. Imagine suddenly having large tables of 15 people and making omelettes one by one. People either eat cold or wait a long time to be served. Let's start making the omelette. I use a non-stick Teflon pan to prevent the omelette from sticking. I use a silicone spatula to avoid damaging my pan and for easy detachment. I'll be using butter in line with the traditional French omelette recipe. I will add it to the pan and remove any excess with paper to prevent the butter from browning and altering the omelette's color. The preheated pan is on medium heat. I'll add some butter, spreading it around the edges with a paper, ensuring the entire pan is buttered for flavor, but I'll remove any excess. I have the eggs already beaten. Remember, we let them rest for a while to get rid of all the air bubbles, and we put them in the pan. It has to make this noise that I don't know if you heard. It has to make a small crackling noise so that the eggs are already cooking. And with the silicone spatula, I start to integrate. Notice that I'm taking the eggs to the edges. It's pre-cooking at the base. It's also cooking, and because it's a super traditional recipe but with medium-high difficulty, because it requires a lot of sensitivity. I now know that the pan and the stove's heat is good. It has a temperature that I find pleasant. But if you consider it's too high, that it instantly starts to correlate, remove it from the heat. This demands great sensitivity. Keep reading how the egg is behaving, how the pan is. Notice it's like I'm making scrambled eggs initially. I'm making sure it starts to coagulate, and that those coagulated pieces of egg are integrated throughout the preparation. Always take it to the edges. It's good that the edges also get cooked. When do I stop mixing? Once my scrambled eggs are juicy, I stop stirring and remove the pan from the heat. The residual heat continues to cook the eggs, and I move them towards the edges to create folds. I ensure the pan's base isn't blackened and the surface isn't visible. At this point, I add the filling. I'm taking the cheese, arranging it from the middle to slightly further. This allows for proper folding without reaching the pan's edges. Using a spatula, I check its doneness. It still needs more cooking to come off. I'll return it to the heat and let it sit. I don't move it now and carefully ensure it doesn't change color. If needed, I lower the pan for low temperature cooking, but I want to avoid coloring, so I leave it as is. This is when a smooth layer develops under the egg and everything turns yellow, while the cheese starts to melt. Currently, I'm beginning the folding process. What I'm going to do is, what is the half of the omelet? I close it, here we go, and now I start to close the ends. I start to fold the ends. It has a yellowish color. I'm closing. Notice that with the handle of the pan, I'm tilting forward so that the egg alone, by gravity, plus the help of the spatula, continues to fold. Imagine the egg has strong binding power, but while it's still raw or juicy, that's when I continue folding it. I unite things from the other end. I bring it together, and it's precisely the moment to join the two ends while the egg is still juicy. Close the ends, start sticking it together, bring the egg right up against the edge, close it, and now what I'm going to do is turn the egg itself over. Here's where I begin to mold it, since the egg is still moist, enabling me to bind it together. Notice its smoothness and lack of color. Upon touching, it's subtly moist. Remember, the egg continues to cook from residual heat. Now, we're going to plate it. We have the egg now very carefully so as not to lose the shape we achieved. We plate it, and here we have a hotel-style omelette. Let's see how it turned out on the inside. As we can see, we have all the outside part that is coagulated, it's fluffy, and inside you can see the super juicy filling that has good moisture, but the egg is cooked. There's no raw egg falling everywhere, and the cheese is already melted. Let's try it, see how it is. I appreciate this technique as it highlights the contrast in textures between the fluffy, spongy, coagulated exterior and the extremely creamy interior. The chosen Gouda cheese adds a unique intensity. The cheese flavor and the egg's unique sweetness from being untoasted can be tasted, defining a good French omelette for me. Thank you.